close your eyes for a moment, if you will. Not tightly, but softly, the way you might when a long day finally releases its grip and the room grows drowsy around you. Let your breath settle into a gentle rhythm, in and out, like the slow breathing of a sleeping cat. Now, imagine that you are not in your home, not in your bed, but somewhere far away, centuries ago, on a road that stretches across a vast and dusty plain. The sun has just dipped below the horizon, and the sky is a deep, bruised purple, with the first stars beginning to prick through the fabric of the evening. You are tired, sore, and your throat is dry. You have been riding for hours, perhaps days, on a horse that feels as weary as you do. The road is little more than a worn track of earth and stone, winding through a landscape that is beautiful but ruthless. In the distance, you hear the faint howl of a wolf, and you cannot help but shiver, even though the air is still warm from the day's heat. You know that night is not a friend to the solitary traveler. But then, just as the last light fades from the sky, you see it. A dark shape rising out of the gloom, solid and welcoming as a promise. It is a caravanserai, an Ottoman inn for travelers, and for you, it is nothing less than a miracle. This is the story of how such places kept travelers alive on dangerous roads, and tonight we shall drift into that world together. The Ottoman Empire, you see, stretched across 3 continents, from the Balkans to the Arabian Peninsula, and its roads were arteries of trade, pilgrimage, and communication. But these roads were not the smooth, well-lit highways we know today. They were rough, often unpaved, and they passed through mountains, deserts, and forests that harbored all manner of threats. Bandits lurked in the shadows, waiting for a lone merchant or a small party to wander into their grasp. Wild animals, from wolves to jackals, prowled the night. And the weather itself could be a killer. A sudden storm in the mountains could send freezing rain down upon a traveler, or a sandstorm in the desert could blind and suffocate anyone caught in its grip. In this world, a journey of 100 miles was an enterprise fraught with peril, and many set out never to return. The Caravanserai was the answer to this ancient problem, a system of roadside inns that dotted the empire's major routes, often spaced a day's journey apart. They were built by sultans, governors, and wealthy merchants, not out of sheer charity, but because trade was the lifeblood of the empire, and protecting travelers meant protecting prosperity. And so, across the dusty landscapes of Anatolia, Syria, and beyond, these stone sanctuaries rose, offering shelter, food, water, and safety to anyone who arrived, regardless of their faith, nationality, or fortune. Picture the scene as you approach one of these caravanserais. It stands before you like a fortress, with high, thick walls made of stone or baked brick, often surmounted by battlements that give it a stern, almost military appearance. The gate is a massive wooden door, studded with iron, and above it, perhaps, an inscription in elegant Arabic calligraphy, welcoming you in the name of God and the Sultan. You dismount, your legs trembling with relief, and lead your horse through the entrance. The gate swings open with a groan, and you step into a courtyard that is surprisingly calm and orderly. The space is vast, often rectangular, with 2 levels of rooms surrounding it. The ground floor is for your animals, stalls for horses, camels, and donkeys, with troughs of water and feed. The upper floor is for you, small, clean rooms, each with a simple bedroll and a lamp where you can lay down your weary bones. In the center of the courtyard, there is usually a fountain, its water cool and fresh, and perhaps a small mosque or a prayer area. The air smells of hay, leather, and cooking fires, and the sound of voices, low and murmuring, fills the space like a lullaby. You are not alone. Other travelers have arrived before you, merchants from Persia, pilgrims from the steppes, soldiers on leave, and wandering dervishes. They sit in clusters, sharing stories and drinking tea. The atmosphere is not one of boisterous festivity, but of quiet, grateful relief. The Caravanserai is a haven, and everyone inside it understands that they have been spared another night of danger. Now, the beauty of this system, and the reason it works so well in a sleepy story like this, is that the Caravanserai is not just a building. It is a complete ecosystem of hospitality. The people who run it are known as the Caravanserai keeper, often a respected local figure who manages a small staff. The keeper greets you with a nod and asks for no payment up front. In fact, in many caravanserais, the first 3 days of lodging are free, a tradition that dates back to the charitable foundations, the Waqfs, that funded these inns. You are given a simple meal, flatbread, maybe some lentil soup, dried fruit, and water. If you have the means, you might purchase a bit of meat or honey from the small market that springs up inside the courtyard. But no one is turned away. The door is open to rich and poor alike, and the only expectation is that you respect the peace of the place. You notice that the gates are closed at nightfall, and guards are posted on the roof. This is not a prison, it is a precaution. The world outside is dangerous, but inside these walls, you are safe. The guards do not carry drawn swords or shout commands. They simply walk the perimeter, their footsteps soft on the stone, their eyes scanning the darkness. It is a reassuring presence, like the sound of a parent moving about the house while a child sleeps. But let us dwell for a moment on the road itself, the dangerous path that leads to this sanctuary. Because to truly appreciate the caravanserai, you must understand the traveler's dread. Imagine setting out at dawn, your pack heavy with goods, perhaps silk from China, spices from India, or wool from Anatolia. The road is empty, but for the occasional shepherd. By midday, the sun is a hammer, and the dust chokes your throat. You pass the bones of a dead horse, picked clean by vultures, and you try not to think of what happened to its rider. By afternoon, your eyes scan every ridge and rock formation for movement. A group of riders appears on the horizon, and your heart pounds until you see that they are just other travelers, their camels laden with carpets. They wave, you wave back, and the relief is so profound it makes you weak. As dusk approaches, a sense of urgency takes hold. You must reach a caravanserai before the gates close, before the real night sets in. There are stories, told in hushed tones around caravan campfires of those who did not make it. A merchant named Ahmed, who stopped to repair a saddle and was found the next morning with his throat slit. A group of pilgrims who missed the caravanserai by an hour and were set upon by wolves. These are not tales told for shock. They are warnings, passed down like the worn path itself. And so, when you finally see the caravanserai, your heart lifts with a gratitude that is almost painful. The light from its lanterns spills through the cracks in the gate, and you know that you have survived another day. Once inside, the small details of the caravanserai begin to enchant you. The courtyard fountain, for instance, is not merely for decoration. It provides water for drinking, washing, and for the animals, but it also serves as a gathering point. In the early evening, travelers bring their cups and sit on the stone edge, listening to the gentle splash. One might bring a oud, a stringed instrument, and begin to pluck a soft melody. Another might recite a poem. I love to imagine a weary merchant, his beard flecked with dust, closing his eyes as the music drifts through the air. He is thinking of his wife and children back home, and of the profits he might make if he reaches Constantinople in time. But for now, he is simply here, in the quiet safety of the caravanserai, and that is enough. The keeper sometimes brings out a pot of coffee, thick and bitter, sweetened with a lump of sugar. The small cups are passed around, and for a little while, all the travelers share a moment of companionship. It is not a loud party. It is a gentle communion, a recognition that we are all in this together, all far from home, all grateful for a roof over our heads. And then, as the night deepens, the courtyard empties. The song ends. The last cup is drained. The keeper extinguishes the larger lanterns, leaving only a few dim flames to guide the guards. You climb the stairs to your small room, where a straw mattress and a woolen blanket await. The room is bare, but it is clean, and the stone walls mute the wind. You lie down, and you hear the soft snorting of a camel below, the creak of a gate as the guards make their rounds, and the distant, muffled call of a prayer from the minaret of a nearby mosque. The sound is so familiar, so ancient, that it feels like a lullaby. And you fall asleep, knowing that when you wake, the caravanserai will give you a fresh loaf of bread and a skin of water, and you will continue on your journey, refreshed and alive. Now, you might wonder who exactly built these wonderful sanctuaries. The Ottomans, being a practical people, understood that a road without inns is a road that leads to ruin. Many caravanserais were built as part of a charitable foundation, or waqf, which not only funded the construction, but also maintained the inn in perpetuity. A wealthy pasha or a sultan would endow land or revenue to support the caravanserai, ensuring that food and fodder were always available. The most famous builder of caravanserais in the early Ottoman period was Sultan Bayezid-I, who commissioned a series of them along the roads to Edirne and beyond. But let me tell you about one particular caravanserai that still stands today, near the town of Akşehir in central Turkey. It is called the Karate Caravanserai, named after a Seljuk vizier who built it in the 13th century, before the Ottomans even came to power. The Seljuks were the predecessors, and they passed the tradition to the Ottomans. This caravanserai has a massive gate carved with intricate geometric patterns, and inside, the courtyard is surrounded by vaulted arcades. It is now a museum, but if you visit, you can still feel the echo of the countless travelers who passed through its gates. Imagine standing there, where the stones have been worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, where the fountain has been silent for 100 years, but once gave water to parched pilgrims. The air is still and cool, and you can almost smell the dust and the hay and the faint spice of a faraway market. That is the magic of the caravanserai. It endures, even in memory. There is a gentle irony, too, in the way these caravanserais operated. They were meant to be places of peace, but they were also places of business. Merchants would haggle over prices, exchange news of distant lands, and even settle debts. The keeper would sometimes act as a banker, holding valuables for safekeeping. The guards were paid to keep order, but they were also known to break up arguments with a firm but patient hand. One historical tale, perhaps apocryphal, but worth the telling, speaks of a merchant who tried to cheat a traveler by selling him watered-down milk. The keeper discovered the fraud and made the merchant drink the entire jug himself as a punishment. The merchant belched and stumbled around the courtyard for the rest of the evening, much to the amusement of the other guests. It is a small story, a tiny moment of justice, but it tells you something about the character of these places. They were not just shelters, they were communities with their own codes of honor and kindness. And that kindness, offered day after day, year after year, saved countless lives. As you drift deeper into this night, let your mind wander to the geography of it all. The Ottoman roads stretched from the walled city of Sarajevo to the bazaars of Aleppo, from the banks of the Danube to the shores of the Red Sea. Every major route had its caravanserais, sometimes just a day apart, sometimes two in the more desolate stretches. In the desert, the caravanserais were often built around a well, a rare and precious source of water. They were simple, single-story buildings, but they were fortified against both the heat and the cold. The walls were thick, the doors strong, and the roofs often had small courtyards open to the sky, so that travelers could sleep under the stars in the warm months. I recall a description from an old travelogue written by a European traveler named Evliya Celebi, who journeyed through the Ottoman lands in the 17th century. He wrote of a caravanserai in the Taurus Mountains, where the keeper served a soup made from lamb, chickpeas, and yogurt, so thick and hearty that a single bowl could sustain a man for a full day. Evliya also noted that the caravanserai had a cat, a large tabby, that would sleep on the warm stones near the kitchen fire and let travelers stroke its fur as they waited for their meal. The cat, it seems, was as much a part of the inn as the gate and the well. Such details may seem trivial, but they are the very stuff of comfort. In a dangerous world, a small kindness, a warm meal, a friendly cat, a soft mattress, can be the difference between despair and hope. And so, as we settle into this story, I want you to think of the Caravanserai not just as a historical building, but as a state of mind. It is the rest at the end of a long day. It is the safe harbor after a storm. It is the warm cup of tea offered by a stranger who becomes a friend. The Ottoman caravanserais kept travelers alive on dangerous roads, yes, but they also kept their spirit alive. They reminded people that even in a harsh world, there is still a place for them. As you lie here in your own quiet room, listening to my voice, I hope you feel a little of that same comfort. The night outside might be dark, but inside you are safe. Tomorrow, the journey will continue, but for now, rest. The Caravanserai has opened its gates for you. And what does that mean exactly for you, the traveler? It means that once you have passed through that gate, the world outside becomes a distant murmur. The road, that endless, dusty, perilous ribbon of earth, is no longer your concern. The bandits, the wolves, the sudden sandstorms, the freezing nights where the wind cuts through every layer of wool and leather, all of that is locked away, barred by a heavy wooden door that creaks and groans as it swings shut. You hear the guard slide the bolt into place, a sound that is both final and reassuring. It is the sound of safety, and in that moment, you exhale a breath you did not realize you had been holding. The courtyard, as I mentioned, is a world unto itself, but let us linger there a little longer, for it is the heart of the Caravanserai. In the daytime, it is a hive of activity, but at night it becomes a quieter, more introspective place. The animals are settled in their stalls, the horses stamping softly, the camels grumbling low in their throats, the donkeys standing motionless as if carved from stone. The air smells of hay and dung, and the faint sweetness of dried apricots from a merchant's pack. Some travelers choose to sleep in the open gallery that runs around the courtyard, under the arcades, where the stars are visible through the carved stone screens. They lay out their thin mats and wrap themselves in cloaks, and they talk in low voices until sleep overtakes them. One man might be telling a story about a djinn he encountered on a mountain pass, a creature that appeared as a whirlwind of dust and whispered riddles until he tossed a handful of salt at it. The others listen, half believing, half smiling, for such tales are as much a part of the road as the blisters on one's feet. But perhaps you are one of those travelers who prefers a room. And the room, though small, has its own quiet charm. The walls are thick stone, painted white with lime wash, and they keep the heat of the day inside long after the sun has set. There is a small window, high up, with wooden shutters that you can open to let in the night breeze. If you stand on tiptoe, you can see the minaret of the nearest mosque, or perhaps the stars wheeling slowly above the roof tiles. The mattress is stuffed with straw, and it crackles when you lie down, but it molds itself to your body after a few moments. The blanket is coarse wool, but it is warm, and it smells of sun and time. The keeper's wife likely beat it clean on a rock that morning. On a small ledge, there is a clay oil lamp, its flame flickering gently casting dancing shadows on the ceiling. You can blow it out when you are ready to sleep, but first, you might just watch it for a while, listening to the sounds of the caravanserai settling in for the night. And what sounds they are! The keeper and his family have their own quarters near the gate. You can hear the faint clatter of pots as the evening meal is cleaned up, the murmur of voices, a child's laugh. Guards make their rounds, their footsteps soft on the stone, occasionally stopping to exchange a few words with a restless traveler. One of the guards carries a lantern on a pole, and the light swings and bobs as he walks, casting long shadows that move like ghosts. He checks that the animals are secure, that the gate is still bolted, that no one has climbed over the wall. He is a patient man, this guard, with a beard that has gone gray at the temples. He has seen many nights, many travelers, many storms. He knows that the most dangerous time is not the night, but the false dawn, when the bandits sometimes try to catch the guards napping. But tonight, the moon is half full, and the road is quiet. He sits down on a low stone bench near the gate, sets his lantern beside him, and takes out a small piece of wood and a knife. He is carving something, a bird, perhaps, or a tiny camel. It is a hobby, a way to pass the silent hours. He does not speak, but his presence is a comfort. Now, I want to tell you about a particular caravanserai that I find especially soothing to imagine. It is called the Sultan Han, and it lies on the road between Konya and Aksaray, in the heart of Anatolia. It was built in the 13th century by the Seljuk Sultan Alidin Kikubad, but the Ottomans used it for centuries afterward. The Sultan Han is enormous, one of the largest caravanserais in the world. Its outer walls are made of stone blocks, so massive that they seem to have been lifted into place by giants. Inside, there is a great covered hall, a kind of indoor market where merchants could store their goods and even sell them to passing caravans. The hall is lit by small windows high up, and the light falls in shafts, illuminating the dust motes that dance in the air. In the winter, a fire burns in a central hearth, and the smoke rises through a hole in the roof. The walls are blackened with centuries of soot, but they still feel warm and protective. In one corner, there is a small mosque raised on pillars so that travelers could pray without dismounting from their camels. Imagine that. A place where you could say your prayers while your animal rested, the two of you together in the presence of something greater than yourselves. There is a story about the Sultan Han that I recall, perhaps not entirely true, but true enough in spirit. It is said that a traveler arrived one evening, exhausted and half frozen, having lost his caravan in a blizzard. The keeper took him in, gave him dry clothes, fed him hot soup, and put him to bed. In the morning, the traveler woke to find that his camel had been groomed and fed, and his packs had been brought inside and dried. He was so grateful that he offered the keeper his finest silk sash, a gift from a merchant in Isfahan. But the keeper refused, saying that he was merely doing his duty as a servant of the Waqf. The traveler insisted, and the keeper finally accepted, but only on the condition that the sash be sold and the money used to buy extra fodder for the animals of poor travelers. And so, for weeks afterward, those who had no money to buy hay for their horses or camels would find a little extra waiting for them, thanks to that silk sash. The Caravanserai, you see, was not just a building. It was a living system of charity, a network of small kindnesses that rippled outward and touched everyone. And that system extended far beyond the Caravanserai itself. The Ottomans, being excellent administrators, linked these inns to other facilities along the road. There were bridges repaired by the same endowment, wells dug for travelers, and even small clinics where a physician might treat a sick pilgrim. The route from Istanbul to Mecca, for example, was lined with such institutions, and the Caravanserais served as way stations for the annual Hajj pilgrimage. Thousands of pilgrims would pass through, and the Caravanserais provided not only shelter, but also spiritual comfort. There were imams who gave sermons, storytellers who recounted the tales of the prophets, and scholars who debated points of law under the arcades. You could sit in the courtyard and listen to a man with a long white beard recite the poetic verses of Rumi, whose tomb is not far from the Sultan Han. The voice would rise and fall, and the words, even if you did not understand them all, would settle into your bones like a deep, slow heartbeat. I think that is what makes the Caravanserai so special. It is a place where the sacred and the mundane mingle. Here, a merchant haggles over the price of figs. There, a traveler washes his feet before prayer. The keeper might be a gruff old fellow with a missing tooth and a loud laugh, but he also knows the names of the prophets and can recite the blessings for a safe journey. The food is simple: flatbread, olives, cheese, dried meat, and a stew made from whatever vegetables are in season, but it is offered with a kind of grace. You eat slowly, savoring each bite, because you know that tomorrow you will be back on the road, and such meals will be a memory. And as you eat, you might share the table with a merchant from Venice, a dervish from Persia, a soldier on his way to a garrison in the Balkans, and a woman traveling with her elderly father to visit a shrine. You do not speak the same languages, perhaps, but you exchange smiles and nods, and you understand that you are all alike in your weariness and your hope. Let me take you a little deeper into the night. The hour is late, and the courtyard has grown still. The keeper has extinguished most of the lamps, and only a single lantern burns near the well, its light reflected in the water. A cat, perhaps the same tabby that Evliya Celebi mentioned, slips through the archway and pads over to the fountain. It drinks, lapping daintily, then sits down and begins to wash its face. A few embers glow in the kitchen fire, and the scent of wood smoke lingers. Somewhere, a camel snorts and shifts its weight. You walk to the fountain yourself, not because you are thirsty, but because you want to feel the night air on your face. The stone edge is cool, and you sit down, dipping your fingers into the water. It is cold and clear, fed by a spring that has been flowing for 1,000 years. You look up at the stars, and you think about how many other travelers have sat here in this same spot, on this same night of the year, centuries apart. The stars are the same stars that guided the first caravans, the same stars that the poet Rumi looked at as a boy. You feel a strange connection, not to the past exactly, but to a kind of eternal present, where time flows like this water, always moving and always still. Now let us consider the road itself, for the caravanserai cannot be understood without its opposite, the dangerous, unforgiving path. The road was not a single ribbon, but a network, and each route had its own character. The road from Bursa to Constantinople was relatively safe, with well-maintained bridges and frequent inns. But the road from Baghdad to Damascus crossed the Syrian desert, where water was scarce and the sun brutal. The caravanserais there were often fortified like small castles, with watchtowers and arrow slits, because the open country was home to Bedouin tribes who might demand a toll, or worse. And yet, even in those desert outposts, the same hospitality prevailed. I recall a description from a traveler named Ibn Battuta, who journeyed through these lands in the 14th century. He wrote of a caravanserai near the mouth of the Euphrates, where the keeper offered him a bowl of yogurt and a piece of fresh cheese, and then apologized for not having more. "For we are far from any market," the keeper said, "and I fear my guests will go hungry tonight." But Ibn Battuta noted that the keeper's children had given up their own supper to feed him, and he wept at their kindness. Such moments of generosity, small and humbling, are the true wealth of the caravanserai. And so, as we draw deeper into this imaginary night, I want you to picture a specific traveler. He is a young man, perhaps 20 years old, traveling alone for the first time. He is carrying a letter from his father to a merchant in Aleppo, along with a few coins and a bundle of clothes. He is nervous, but also excited. He has heard stories of the great cities, of the bazaars where you can buy silks from China and spices from India, and he dreams of making his fortune. But tonight, he is just a boy, sitting in the corner of the caravanserai's courtyard, watching the older men. One of them, a wizened old merchant with a scar across his cheek, notices him and calls him over. "Come, sit," he says, offering a piece of flatbread. "Eat. You look like you have not had a proper meal in days." The boy hesitates, then accepts. They sit in silence for a while, and then the old man begins to tell a story about a time he was captured by bandits in the mountains and escaped by pretending to be a simpleton. The boy listens, wide-eyed, and for a moment, his fear is forgotten. The old man laughs, a dry, rasping sound, and claps the boy on the back. "You will learn," he says. "The road teaches you everything. But first, you must eat and sleep." And he wanders off to find his bed, leaving the boy with the lingering warmth of kindness. You see, the caravanserai is not only a building, it is a crucible of human connection. In the morning, when the gates open and the travelers go their separate ways, they carry with them not only bread and water, but also the memory of that kindness. It spreads along the roads, from inn to inn, from city to city. And in that way, the caravanserai becomes a kind of heart, pumping life into the veins of the empire. The Ottoman roads were dangerous, yes, but they were also alive with stories, with trade, with hope. And the caravanserais were the resting places where that hope was renewed. As you lie here, perhaps in your own bed, or perhaps in a cozy chair by the fire, let the image of that caravanserai settle over you like a soft blanket. The walls are thick, the door is bolted, the guards are watchful. The keeper has prepared the morning bread, and it waits in the pantry, wrapped in a cloth. The animals are at peace, the stars are turning, and you are safe. The road outside is a strange and treacherous place, but tonight you do not need to think about it. Tonight you are in the caravanserai, and that is enough. Let your eyes grow heavy. Let your breathing slow. The fountain in the courtyard continues its gentle splashing, a sound that has lulled countless travelers to sleep. The cat has finished its washing and is now curled on a stone, purring. The guard is whittling his little bird, and the knife makes a soft scratch at the wood. These sounds, these tiny sounds of life and safety, will carry you into a deep and dreamless rest. For the caravanserai has opened its gates for you, and it will keep you alive through the night until the sun returns and the road calls you again. But not yet, not yet. Rest now. The journey can wait. And so the night deepens, and the caravanserai settles into its quietest hour. The lantern by the well flickers, its flame bending in a breath of air that slips through the arches. The cat has curled into a perfect circle, its tail over its nose, and the only movement is the slow rise and fall of its ribs. The guard has stopped whittling, his head nodding forward, the little bird now a mere shape in his palm. Even the camels have ceased their grumbling, and the horses stand motionless, their heads low. It is that hour when time itself seems to pause, when the world holds its breath between one day and the next. You might think that nothing happens in such an hour, and you would be almost right. But if you listen closely, you can hear the soft murmur of voices from the men's hall, where a few travelers are still awake, trading stories in low tones. One of them, a merchant from the city of Edirne, is telling his companions about a strange encounter he had on the road. He had been traveling alone, he says, when a thick fog rolled in from the hills, so dense that he could not see the ears of his own donkey. He stopped, afraid to proceed, and after a while he heard a voice calling his name. He could not tell where it came from, and he felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. But then a horse appeared out of the mist, and on it was a dervish in a patched cloak, who simply said, "Follow me." And the merchant did, because he had no other choice. The dervish led him through the fog, turning and twisting, until suddenly they emerged into a clearing where a small caravanserai stood, its windows glowing with warm light. The dervish dismounted, tied his horse, and walked inside without a word. The merchant followed and found the keeper waiting with a bowl of soup. "You are late," the keeper said, as if he had been expecting him. The merchant never saw the dervish again, but he always wondered if the man was a saint or a jinn, or simply a wanderer who knew the road better than anyone. The other travelers nod, and one of them, a grizzled old soldier, tells a story of his own. He was once caught in a sandstorm near the city of Mosul, and he took refuge in a caravanserai that he later learned was built on the site of an ancient temple. That night, he dreamed of a woman in white, weeping by a broken pillar. He woke to find the keeper standing over him. "You saw her," the keeper said, not a question, but a statement. "She is the spirit of the old place. She weeps for the stones that were scattered and the prayers that were forgotten. But she does not harm anyone. She is only sad." The soldier said he did not sleep well after that, but he also did not feel afraid. He felt, instead, a kind of sorrow, as if the whole world was full of ghosts who had lost their homes. When he left the next morning, he left a small coin on the pillar, a gesture he could not explain. He never dreamed of the woman again. These stories drift through the hall, mixing with the smoke from the fire, and they settle into the minds of the listeners like seeds planted in soft soil. You may not remember them in the morning, but they will be there deep down, adding layers to your own understanding of the road. For the road is not just a route from one place to another. It is a living thing with its own memory, its own ghosts, its own blessings. And the caravanserai is where those memories are shared, passed from mouth to ear, from one weary traveler to another. Perhaps you are dozing now, and the stories have become blurry, like distant shapes in fog. That is good. That is the state we want. The caravanserai does not demand your attention. It only offers its shelter, and you may take it or leave it as you wish. But if you choose to stay awake a little longer, I will tell you one more thing. It is about the keeper. Every caravanserai had a keeper, and these keepers were often men who had traveled far themselves, who had seen enough of the world to know the value of a warm hearth and a full stomach. They were not always kind, but they were always practical. They knew how many days a camel could go without water, which roads were safe and which were not, and how to spot a thief before he stole the wool from a sleeping merchant. They were the guardians of the threshold, the ones who decided who entered and who was turned away. And they were almost always generous, because they understood that generosity was the only thing that kept the world turning. I remember a story about a keeper in a caravanserai near the town of Aksihir in central Anatolia. He was an old man named Maimed, who had lost his left hand in a skirmish with bandits when he was young. He kept the stump hidden under a long sleeve, but everyone knew. He was gruff and spoke little, but he had a way of knowing what a traveler needed before the traveler knew it himself. A man would arrive, shivering and exhausted, and before he could ask, Maimed would place a bowl of hot lentil soup in his hands. A woman would sit down to rest, and Maimed would bring her a cushion for her back. He never took payment for these small kindnesses, only for the bed and the stable. One night, a traveler asked him why he was so generous. Maimed shrugged and said, "Because I have been hungry." That was all. He did not explain further, but the traveler understood. You cannot receive such kindness without being changed by it. And that is the secret of the caravanserai. It changes you. It softens the hard edges you have built around yourself. It reminds you that you are not alone, that your journey is part of a larger journey, and that every stranger is a potential friend. Now, let us move to the morning. The first light is a thin gray line at the edge of the sky, just above the horizon. The rooster crows, a sharp sound that cuts through the last threads of sleep. The keeper is already up, stoking the fire, and the smell of fresh bread drifts through the halls. The cat stretches, arches its back, and pads toward the kitchen, hoping for a scrap of fish. The travelers stir, some reluctantly, pulling their blankets over their heads for one more moment of warmth. But the road is calling, and they know they must rise. There's water to fetch, horses to saddle, and a long day ahead. Watch the young man from the night before. He wakes slowly, his eyes bleary, his limbs stiff from sleeping on the stone floor. He had not realized how cold it would be, even inside. He wraps his cloak around himself and walks to the fountain, where he splashes water on his face. The water is so cold it makes him gasp, but it also wakes him fully. He looks around at the courtyard, now bathed in the soft blue of early dawn. The arches cast long shadows, and the stone walls are cool and damp. He sees the old merchant who gave him bread the night before, now saddling his donkey with practiced efficiency. The merchant nods at him, and the young man nods back. There is no need for words. They are both on the road, and that is enough. The keeper brings out the bread, still hot from the oven, and a pot of tea brewed with mint and a little sugar. The young man takes a piece of bread and a small cup of tea, and he eats slowly, savoring the warmth. He thinks about the letter in his pocket, the one he is to deliver to Aleppo. He thinks about his father, who had given him this task with a mixture of pride and worry. He thinks about the stories he heard last night, about the dervish in the fog and the weeping woman. He does not know if they are true, but they feel true. They feel like warnings and comforts, both at once. And then the time comes to leave. The gates are unbolted, and the great wooden doors swing open, revealing the road stretching into the distance, still shadowed, but lightening with every passing minute. The young man mounts his donkey, adjusts his bundle, and takes a deep breath. He looks back at the caravanserai one last time. It looks smaller now, less imposing, just a solid shape against the sky. The keeper is standing in the doorway, his hand raised in a silent farewell. The young man raises his own hand, then turns and urges his donkey forward. He does not know what lies ahead, but he is not afraid. Not as afraid as he was yesterday. The caravanserai has given him something. A night of safety, a meal, a handful of stories, and the memory of a gruff old man who offered him bread without being asked. He carries that memory with him, like a small flame inside his chest, and it will keep him warm on the cold nights to come. And so the day begins. The road is dusty, the sun climbs higher, and the landscape slowly changes from green fields to rocky hills to barren plain. The young man passes other travelers, a family on a cart, a group of merchants with a string of camels, a lone rider on a fine Arabian horse. They all nod or wave, and the young man learns to read the road. He learns that a cluster of stones by the side of the path might mark a spring. He learns that a tall tree in the distance is a sign that a village is near. He learns that the best time to travel is early, before the heat of the day, and that you should always carry water even if you think you will not need it. These lessons are not taught in books. They are taught by the road itself and by the people who have traveled it before him. By midday, he reaches another caravanserai, smaller than the one he left in the morning, but welcoming nonetheless. He stops for a rest, eating dried figs and drinking from the well. The keeper here is a woman, which is rare but not unheard of. She is broad-shouldered and brisk, and she tells him that the next caravanserai is about half a day's journey, provided the bandits are not active. She says it with a wry smile, and the young man laughs nervously. "You will be fine," she says. "Just keep moving and do not stop after dark. And if you see 3 rocks stacked on a boulder, take the left path. The right path leads to a dead end and a family of wolves." He thanks her and sets off again, her advice echoing in his mind. The afternoon wears on, and the landscape grows more desolate. The ground is cracked and dry, and the only vegetation is a low, thorny bush. The young man begins to feel the weight of the sun, and his eyelids grow heavy. He fights the urge to sleep, but it is a losing battle. He remembers what the keeper said about not stopping after dark, and he pushes on. The sun begins to sink, casting long shadows, and the air cools. He sees the 3 rocks stacked on a boulder, just as the woman said, and he takes the left path. It leads through a narrow valley, and at the end, he sees the lights of another caravanserai. The relief washes over him like a wave. He is safe. He will sleep tonight in a warm bed, eat a hot meal, and listen to more stories. And in the morning, he will go on and on until he reaches Aleppo and delivers his letter. But that is a story for another night. For now, let us linger here in the twilight as the young man rides toward the glowing windows. The caravanserai stands solid and square, its walls rising from the dusty earth. The gate is open, and the keeper, a short man with a cheerful face, is waiting. "Welcome," he says. "You made it just in time. We have stew tonight and fresh bread, and a storyteller from the East who knows the tales of the 1,001 Nights." The young man dismounts, his legs shaky, his heart full. He hands his donkey to a boy who leads it to the stable, and he steps through the gate. Inside, the courtyard is alive with people, men playing board games, women chatting, children chasing a ball. A fire crackles in the center, and the smell of cooking fills the air. The young man finds a spot by the fire, and soon a bowl of stew is placed in his hands. He eats slowly, listening to the chatter around him. He does not understand every word, but he understands the tone. It is the sound of people at ease, people who have found shelter for the night. And he is one of them. The storyteller begins his tale as the stars emerge. His voice is low and hypnotic, and the young man leans forward, letting the words wash over him. The tale is about a prince who loses his way in a desert and is saved by a magical bird. It is a story the young man has heard before, but it feels new tonight because he himself has been saved by a caravanserai, and that is its own kind of magic. The fire pops and sparks. The shadows dance. The night wraps around them all like a soft, dark blanket, and the young man feels, for the first time in his life, that he belongs to something larger than himself. He belongs to the road and to the caravanserai and to the endless chain of travelers who have found their way here generation after generation. The hours pass. The fire burns low. The children fall asleep in their mother's laps. The storyteller finishes his tale, and the listeners murmur their thanks. The young man finds a corner of the hall, spreads his cloak on the floor, and lies down. He is not sure if he will dream of the dervish, or the weeping woman, or the magic bird, but it does not matter. He is here in the caravanserai, and that is enough. He closes his eyes. The soft sounds of the night fill his ears, the crackle of the last embers, the quiet footsteps of the keeper making his rounds, the distant call of an owl. He breathes in the smell of smoke and dust and hay. And slowly, gently, he falls asleep. And so it goes, night after night, caravanserai after caravanserai. The road stretches on, but so does the chain of safe havens, each one a bead on a string that spans the length of the Ottoman Empire. The keepers change, the travelers change, the stories change, but the pattern remains the same. A weary soul arrives, is fed, is housed, is comforted, and goes on. This is the secret of the caravanserai. It does not end. It only continues as long as there are roads and travelers and the simple human need for shelter. And as you lie here in your own bed, you are part of that pattern too. For every night, in your own way, you find your own caravanserai. You close your eyes, you rest, and the road waits for tomorrow. The cat has moved from the fountain to the warming stone by the kitchen. The guard has finished his whittling and now sits with his back against the wall, his eyes closed but his ears alert. The water in the fountain still splashes, a sound that seems to come from far away, from the beginning of time. The stars are still turning, the same stars that the young man saw on his first night, the same stars that guided the caravans across the desert. They are timeless, patient, and quiet. They do not hurry. They do not worry. They simply shine and wait. And so we wait with them. The caravanserai is a place of waiting, but it is also a place of arriving. Every arrival is a small victory over the dangers of the road, a pause in the journey, a moment of peace. And every departure is a new beginning, a step into the unknown, a leap of faith. The young man will arrive in Aleppo, deliver his letter, and make his fortune. The old merchant will return to his family. The soldier will reach his garrison. The dervish will continue his wandering. And the caravanserai will stand, as it has for centuries, waiting for the next traveler to come through the gate. Now, let your own thoughts drift. Let the sounds of the night become softer, more distant. The caravanserai is fading now, not because it is gone, but because you are falling into the deep, quiet sleep that it has offered you. The walls are thick. The door is bolted. The stars are turning, and you are safe. The road can wait until morning. Rest now. Rest. And yet, even as the young man sleeps, another traveler approaches. The road is not empty. It never is. Out of the darkness, a shape emerges, a figure on foot, walking with a steady, tired rhythm. This traveler is older, a woman with a long gray braid and a staff carved from olive wood. She has been walking for 3 days from a village that no longer exists, burned by raiders. She carries a small bundle on her back, and her sandals are worn thin. She does not hurry. She knows the caravanserai is there, that it will not close its doors until dawn, that the keeper will have a bowl of soup for her even if she arrives at the last hour. This knowledge is a kind of faith, a faith in the kindness of strangers and the order of the road. She sees the glow of the windows, and her pace quickens just a little. The gate is still open. The keeper, the short man with the cheerful face, is sweeping the courtyard, but he looks up and smiles. He has seen 1,000 such travelers, and he knows what they need. He does not ask questions. He points to the well, then to the kitchen. The woman nods, fills her water skin, and finds a place in the corner of the hall where the young man sleeps. She does not disturb him. She spreads her own cloak, eats a piece of bread she has saved, and closes her eyes. The sounds of the night are the same. The crackle of embers, the soft footfall of the keeper, the distant owl. She is safe. She falls asleep. And so the caravanserai fills and empties, like a great stone lung breathing in and breathing out the life of the road. Each traveler brings a story, and each story is a thread woven into the same tapestry. The woman with the gray braid was once a teacher. She taught children to read and write in a small school by a river. The raiders came at dawn, and she fled with nothing but her staff and the clothes on her back. She does not know if any of her students survived. She does not know if she will ever return. But tonight she is here, and the caravanserai does not ask her to explain. It only asks her to rest, to eat, to be warm. And that is a kind of mercy that cannot be bought or sold. The keeper knows her story, or at least the shape of it, because he has heard it 100 times before. War, famine, fire, flood, the loss of a loved one, the loss of a home. Travelers come to the caravanserai not only to rest their bodies, but to rest their hearts. The thick walls do not only keep out the wind and the wolves, they keep out the world for one night, so that a person can remember what it feels like to be safe. The keeper does not say this aloud. He does not need to. He simply refills the oil lamps, checks the bolts on the gate, and makes sure there is enough wood for the fire. The work is simple, but it is sacred. And there is another kind of traveler too, the one who is not fleeing anything, but seeking something. A young woman with a flute in her bag, traveling to the great city of Istanbul to study music. She heard that there is a master there, an old man who knows the secret melodies of the Sufis. She has saved her earnings for 2 years to make this journey. She is nervous, excited, and a little afraid. She has never been away from her village before, but she has heard about the caravanserais, that they are safe, that they are places where a woman traveling alone can sleep without fear. And she has found that it is true. The keeper treats her with respect. The other travelers offer her food, and no one asks unwanted questions. She sits by the fire and plays her flute softly, a tune she learned from her grandmother. The notes rise into the smoky air, and the children stop their chasing to listen. The old men nod their heads. The music drifts out into the night, and the stars seem to shine a little brighter. This is the soul of the caravanserai. It is a place where music can happen, where stories can be told, where a stranger can become a friend. It is a place where the ordinary becomes extraordinary because of the context. The desert outside, the cold air, the long road behind, the uncertain road ahead. In such a place, a simple bowl of soup tastes like a feast. A handful of dried dates tastes like honey. A cup of water tastes like wine. The Caravanserai teaches gratitude, not through sermons, but through experience. You do not need to be told to be thankful. You feel it in your bones from the moment you step through the gate. And the Caravanserai itself, the building, has a kind of personality. In the daytime, it is bustling and noisy. Merchants haggle over prices, camels grumble, children laugh, cooks shout orders. The smell of bread, stew, and spices fills the air. But at night, it becomes something else. The noise settles into a low hum, like a conversation that has been going on for centuries. The walls absorb the sound, hold it, release it slowly. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the echoes of all the travelers who have passed through. The whispers of Bedouin traders, the prayers of pilgrims, the laments of refugees, the songs of soldiers. The Caravanserai is a library of voices, and the night is the time when they speak most clearly. But do not be alarmed. These voices are not ghosts. They are memories, carried in the stone and the wood and the dust. They are the reason the Caravanserai feels so old, so wise, so patient. It has seen everything. It has seen empires rise and fall. It has seen plagues sweep through the land. It has seen peace and war, abundance and famine. And it has never stopped offering its shelter. The keeper may change, the roof may be repaired, the fountain may be replaced, but the essence remains. The Caravanserai is a promise. As long as there are roads, there will be a place to rest. Let us step outside now into the courtyard of that first Caravanserai we visited, the one with the cat and the guard and the storyteller. It is late, and the fire has burned down to coals. The guard is dozing, but his ears are still alert. The cat is curled on the stone, warm and content. The stars are bright, and the moon is a thin crescent, like a sliver of silver in the dark blue sky. The air is cool and dry, and it smells of dust and hay, and the faint sweetness of tobacco from a pipe that someone smoked earlier. Everything is still. The sounds of the night are few: the distant bark of a dog, the rustle of a lizard in the wall, the soft sigh of the wind. And now, imagine that you are standing in the doorway, looking out at the road. The road stretches away, pale in the moonlight, disappearing into the darkness. It is a road that leads to other caravanserais, to other towns, to other empires. It is a road that has been walked by millions of feet, hooves, and wheels over thousands of years. It is a road that connects the past to the present, and the present to the future. And you are part of it, even if you are lying in your own bed, in your own home, in your own century. Because the road is not just a physical path. It is a metaphor. It is the journey of life. And every night, when you close your eyes, you enter a caravanserai of the mind, a place of rest and renewal before you continue your own journey. There is a story about a sultan who built a caravanserai in the middle of a desert. where no one had ever built anything before. His advisors told him it was foolish. There was no water, no trade route, no reason for anyone to pass that way. But the Sultan insisted. He had a dream, he said, in which a weary traveler crawled through the sand, dying of thirst, and found a door. The door opened, and inside was a fountain, a garden, and a table laden with food. The traveler wept with gratitude, and the Sultan woke with a sense of purpose. So he built the Caravanserai. He had a well dug, and it took 3 years to find water. He had walls raised, and they were made of stone brought from a mountain 100 miles away. He planted trees, and they died, and he planted again and again until finally they grew. And when the Caravanserai was finished, it stood alone in the desert, empty and waiting. For a year, no one came. The keeper sat at the gate, looking at the empty road, and wondered if the Sultan had made a mistake. But the Sultan said, "Be patient. The road will come." And indeed, after a year, a small caravan of merchants, lost and low on water, saw the Caravanserai from a distance. They could not believe their eyes. They stumbled through the gate, fell to their knees, and drank from the fountain. They stayed for 3 days, resting and repairing their gear. When they left, they told other merchants, and soon the Caravanserai became a regular stop on a new route, a shortcut that saved travelers' days of difficult terrain. The Sultan's dream had become a reality, not by forcing the road to come, but by trusting that it would. And the Caravanserai stood for centuries, a testament to faith and patience. That story is told in many versions across the Ottoman lands. Sometimes it is a sultan, sometimes a vizier, sometimes a saint. But the lesson is always the same. A caravanserai is an act of hope. It is a belief that someone will come, that the road will bring them, that the kindness of shelter is never wasted. And even if a night passes with no travelers, the caravanserai is not empty. It is full of the possibility of travelers, the anticipation of their arrival. The keeper sweeps the courtyard, refills the lamps, and sets out bread, just in case. Because in the caravanserai, hope is a daily practice. And perhaps that is the most important thing that the caravanserai offers to travelers. Not just food and shelter, but hope. Hope that the road will be kind, that the destination will be reached, that there will be a warm welcome at the end of the day. For a traveler who is lost, exhausted, or grieving, hope is the most precious gift. And the caravanserai gives it freely, without asking for anything in return. The keeper does not check your papers or ask your religion. He does not judge your poverty or your wealth. He simply says, "Come in, rest, you are safe." This tradition of hospitality has deep roots in the Ottoman culture, and it is rooted in the Islamic values of charity and community. Many caravanserais were built as charitable endowments, or waqfs, which meant that their income was used to maintain them and to provide free services to travelers. A traveler could stay for 3 days without paying a single coin. After that, if they wished to stay longer, they could work or pay a small fee, but the first 3 days were a gift. This rule was taken seriously. Keepers were expected to provide clean bedding, hot food, and fresh water, and they were accountable to the officials who oversaw the endowment. There are records of keepers who were dismissed for serving stale bread or for treating travelers poorly. The system was not perfect, but it was remarkably consistent, and it created a network of hospitality that stretched from the Balkans to the Arabian Peninsula. Consider what that meant for an ordinary traveler. If you were walking from Sarajevo to Damascus, a journey that could take months, you would never need to worry about where you would sleep or what you would eat. You would simply walk from one caravanserai to the next, following a route that had been used for centuries. The distances between them were carefully planned. A day's journey for a loaded camel, about 20 to 30 miles, sometimes less in difficult terrain, sometimes more in open plains, but always within reach. And each caravanserai was a known point on the map, a landmark, a promise. You could tell a traveler by the names of the caravanserais he had passed, like a rosary of places: Sivas, Kayseri, Adna, Aleppo, Homs, Damascus. Each name carried memories of a particular well, a particular keeper, a particular story. The young man with the letter, whom we followed earlier, will remember the caravanserai where the old woman with the gray braid arrived, even though he never met her. He will remember the sound of the flute, the storyteller's voice, the smell of stew. He will remember the short keeper's cheerful face. And when he reaches Aleppo and delivers his letter, he will tell his uncle about the caravanserai, and his uncle will nod and say, "Ah, yes, that one. I stayed there 40 years ago." The keeper then was a tall man with a scar on his cheek. He made the best lentil soup in the empire. And the young man will feel a connection across time, a bridge between his experience and his uncle's, a shared knowledge of a place that remains the same even as the people change. That is the magic of the caravanserai. It is not just a building. It is a point of continuity, a piece of stability in a world of change. For centuries, the Ottoman Empire expanded and contracted, fought wars and signed treaties, welcomed new peoples and lost old ones. But the caravanserais remained. They were repaired, rebuilt, sometimes abandoned, but the network persisted. Even after the empire fell, many caravanserais continued to function, adapted to new uses, or simply stood as ruins, their stone walls still sheltering travelers who used them as windbreaks or camping spots. The road never really died. It only changed. And today, if you were to travel through Turkey, Syria, Jordan, or the Balkans, you would find caravanserais still standing, some converted into hotels or museums, some still used as inns, some abandoned and crumbling. You could walk through their courtyards and feel the same peace that the young man felt, the same silence that wrapped around the old woman with the gray braid. The stones are worn smooth by centuries of feet. The fountains are dry, but their basins are still there. The walls are still thick, still strong, still holding the memory of warmth and safety. You could stand in the center of the courtyard and close your eyes, and if you listened very carefully, you might hear the echoes, the murmur of travelers, the clink of cups, the soft strumming of a lute, the laughter of children. It is all there in the stone, waiting for anyone who is quiet enough to hear. And that includes you, lying in your bed, far away in time and space. Because the Caravanserai is not just a historical artifact, it is a state of mind. It is the feeling of coming home after a long day, of closing the door behind you, of knowing that for the next few hours you are safe. It is the warmth of a blanket, the glow of a lamp, the sound of rain on the roof. It is the simple, profound comfort of being sheltered. And that feeling is timeless. It is the same feeling that the young man felt, that the old woman felt, that the flute player felt. It is the same feeling that travelers have felt for thousands of years, and that you feel now as you drift toward sleep. So let the Caravanserai become your own. Let its walls surround you, its roof cover you, its fire warm you. Let the sounds of the night be the sounds of your own room, the hum of a fan, the creak of a floorboard, the distant whistle of a train. Let the keeper of your sleep be the gentle rhythm of your own breath. You have traveled far today in the world of the mind, and you have earned your rest. There is no road to walk tonight, no letter to deliver, no danger to face. There is only the soft darkness, the pillow beneath your head, and the slow, steady beat of your heart. The stars are still turning. The moon is still sailing across the sky. The Caravanserai stands sentinel in the desert of our collective memory, waiting for the next traveler. But for now, that traveler is not you. You have arrived. You are safe. You are home, and the road can wait until morning. Rest now. Rest. But wait before you slip away completely. There is one more thing that the Caravanserai teaches us. It is a lesson that lingers like the scent of wood smoke in a stone room, soft and persistent, not demanding attention, but content to be present. The lesson is this, that the greatest journeys are not measured in miles, but in moments of rest. The Caravanserai was never just a place to sleep. It was a place to gather strength, to share stories, to remember why you began the journey in the first place. And perhaps in that way, it was more important than the road itself. Because without rest, the road becomes a burden. Without pause, the destination loses its meaning. The Caravanserai is the pause, the breath, the still moment between one step and the next. Consider the life of a muleteer in the 16th century. He would wake before dawn, load his animals, and walk all day under the sun or rain. His feet would ache, his back would burn, his mind would grow dull with fatigue. But when he saw the walls of the Caravanserai rising on the horizon, something shifted. He knew that soon he would sit by a fire, drink hot tea, and sleep on a mattress stuffed with straw. He would trade gossip with other muleteers, hear news from distant cities, and maybe even find a letter waiting for him from his family. The Caravanserai was not just a building. It was a promise that the day would end, that the suffering was temporary, that comfort was real. And the muleteers were not the only ones who relied on this network. There were pilgrims traveling to Mecca, merchants carrying silk and spices, scholars moving between libraries, soldiers returning from campaigns, and refugees fleeing war. All of them found shelter in the same stone walls. All of them sat in the same courtyards, drank from the same fountains, and looked up at the same stars. The Caravanserai was a great equalizer. A wealthy merchant and a poor peddler could both rest in the same room, eat the same bread, and listen to the same stories. There was no distinction. The road stripped away pretense, and the Caravanserai welcomed everyone because the road had made them all the same. There is a story from the 17th century about a caravanserai in Anatolia near the town of Aksaray. The keeper, a man named Ahmed, was known for his kindness. He would always greet travelers with a smile and a bowl of hot soup, no matter how late they arrived. One winter night, a group of travelers came in shivering, covered in snow. Ahmed built up the fire, gave them blankets, and made sure they had warm food. Among the travelers was an old woman who could barely speak. Her hands were blue with cold. Ahmed knelt beside her and gently rubbed her hands until the color returned. He did not know her name or where she was from. She was simply a traveler in need, and that was enough. The next morning, the old woman was gone. She had left no message, no payment, not even a thank you. But Ahmed did not mind. He had done what he was supposed to do. Years later, a young man came to the caravanserai and asked for Ahmed by name. He was the grandson of that old woman. She had died soon after her journey, but she had told her family about the keeper with the kind hands. She had instructed them to find him and give him a small pouch of silver as a belated thanks. Ahmed accepted the pouch, but he did not keep it. He used it to buy firewood for the winter, so that no traveler would ever go cold. That story, like many others, is passed down through the generations. It is not written in books. It is whispered around fires, murmured in kitchens, spoken in the half-light of evening. And it is probably not exactly true. Details change. The name of the keeper might be different. The amount of silver might vary. But the essence remains, that kindness travels farther than any road, and that a single act of generosity can echo through decades. The caravanserai was a vessel for that kindness. It held it, carried it, and gave it to anyone who needed it. And so, when you lie in your bed tonight, imagine that you are in that caravanserai. The fire is low. The other travelers are sleeping. You can hear the soft breathing, the occasional rustle of someone turning over. The keeper is still awake, tending the embers, humming a tune that is older than the stones. He sees you are still awake. He nods and smiles. He does not speak. He simply pours a small cup of warm milk and hands it to you. You take it. The warmth spreads through your hands, your chest, your whole body. You drink slowly. The milk is sweet, faintly spiced with cinnamon. It tastes like comfort. It tastes like home. You set down the cup. The keeper takes it and returns to his work. You close your eyes. The sounds of the caravanserai become softer, more distant, like echoes in a cave. The flutter of a moth against the lantern, the whisper of wind through a crack in the wall, the distant bray of a donkey in the stable. These sounds are not noises. They are the language of safety. They tell you that all is well, that the road is far away, that nothing is required of you now except to sleep. And sleep comes, not suddenly, but slowly, like a tide rising. First, your feet relax, then your hands, then your jaw, then the space behind your eyes. You are sinking not into darkness, but into a warm, gentle darkness that holds you like a hammock. You are in the caravanserai of your own mind, a safe place built from all the stories you have heard, all the kindnesses you have received, all the moments of rest that have cradled you. And that caravanserai is always there. You can return to it anytime. You can close your eyes and find the same fire, the same keeper, the same warm milk. It never closes. It never turns anyone away. Because the caravanserai is not a building, not really. It is a way of being. It is the choice to rest when you are tired, to ask for help when you are lost, to offer comfort when you can. It is the knowledge that the road is long, but that there are places along the way where you can stop and breathe. And those places are not just in history. They are in your life right now. Your bed is a caravanserai. Your home is a caravanserai. The arms of someone who loves you are a caravanserai. The moment you pause to look at the sky is a caravanserai. So as you drift, let that knowledge settle around you like a blanket. You are not alone. You are never alone. The road that the Ottoman travelers walked is the same road that you walk in its own way. You have your own distances to cover, your own letters to deliver, your own storms to endure. But you also have your own caravanserais. They are waiting for you as they have always waited. The keeper of your sleep is already there with a smile and a warm cup. All you have to do is arrive, and you have arrived right now. In this moment, the caravanserai of this story has received you. The walls are thick. The roof is strong. The fire is steady. There is nothing more to do, nothing more to worry about. The world outside will keep turning. The stars will continue their slow dance. The moon will rise and set. But here, in this place, time is soft. Time is still. Time is a river that flows around you, not through you. Let that river carry you. Let the current of sleep take you gently, effortlessly, like a leaf floating on a pond. There is no resistance. There is no need to hold on. The caravanserai will hold you. The keeper will watch over you. And in the morning, when you wake, the road will still be there, but it will be easier to walk because you have rested, you have been fed, you have been reminded that the world is full of kindness, even when it seems dark. And that is the final gift of the caravanserai. It is not just a shelter for the body. It is a shelter for the heart. It reminds us that we are all travelers and that we all need rest. It reminds us that there is no shame in stopping, in asking for help, in accepting warmth. It reminds us that the best journeys are not the fastest or the longest, but the ones that include moments of stillness where we can feel the earth beneath us and the sky above us, and know that we are exactly where we are meant to be. So rest now. Rest in the caravanserai of your own making. Rest in the knowledge that you are safe, that you are loved, that you are part of a long, long story of people who have walked and stopped and walked again. The caravanserai stands at the edge of your sleep, its door open, its fire glowing. The keeper nods. The night is deep. The world is quiet, and you are home. Good night. But before you truly drift, let me tell you one more thing about the caravanserai. It is a small thing, perhaps, but it has always stayed with me. It is about the animals, not the horses and camels that travelers rode, though they were certainly important. No, it is about the other animals, the ones that lived in and around the caravanserai. There were always cats in the courtyards, sleek and watchful, their eyes half closed in the sun. They were not pets, not exactly. They were companions of the place, as much a part of the stone and shadow as the fountains and the arches. They would curl beside the fire at night, purring so softly it was like a second layer of warmth. And the keeper would often leave a bit of milk for them in a small clay saucer placed just at the edge of the hearth. It was not written anywhere. It was simply done. There were birds too, sparrows mostly, but sometimes swallows that nested in the high eaves of the stables. They would swoop through the courtyard at dusk, catching insects that rose from the cooling earth. Their chirping was the sound of evening, a lullaby of wings and air. Travelers would stop and watch them, forgetting for a moment the ache in their legs, the dust in their throats. The birds did not care about the road. They cared only about the light, the warmth of the stones, the small crumbs that fell from the bread. And the travelers, watching them, felt a kind of peace. The world was still going on, the birds were still flying, and that meant that some things, at least, were unchanging. I read once in an old traveler's account, written by a Persian merchant who passed through a caravanserai near Konya in the 16th century, that the keeper of that place kept a small goat. It was a curious thing, he wrote. The goat was allowed to wander freely through the courtyard, and it would often approach the guests, nudging their hands with its bony head. The merchant was startled at first. He was not used to being greeted by a goat, but soon he found that the goat was a comfort. It would lie beside him as he ate, chewing on a bit of straw, and the soft rhythm of its chewing was like the ticking of a clock. It reminded him that time was passing, but slowly, and that there was no hurry. He wrote, "The goat taught me patience," and I think the keeper knew that. He kept the goat not for milk or meat, but for the lesson it carried in its quiet presence. There is another account from a Venetian traveler in the early 18th century who described a caravanserai in Syria where a single old camel was allowed to sleep in the corner of the stable, even though it could no longer work. The keeper said that the camel had carried goods along the same road for 20 years. It had earned its rest, and so it was fed and watered, and every morning the keeper would pat its muzzle and speak to it in a low voice. The Venetian was surprised by this. He came from a world where animals were tools, used and discarded. But here, in the caravanserai, the old camel was treated with the same respect as a retired soldier. It was a small thing, but it told a larger story about the kind of place the caravanserai was. It was a place where things were allowed to slow down, where even a camel could dream standing in the hay, its long lashes brushing the dust. And that is perhaps the most important quality of the caravanserai. It gave time to rest, time to heal, time to simply be. The road was a place of urgency. Bandits might be on your trail, the weather might turn, your water might run low. But the caravanserai was a pocket of stillness, a pause in the hurry. Travelers would arrive, and the first thing they would feel was the slowing of their own heartbeats. The walls absorbed the noise of the journey. The keeper's unhurried movements reminded them that there was no need to rush. The soup was not served quickly. It was served slowly, in a bowl that had been warmed by the fire. The water was not gulped, but sipped. The stories were not told in a rush, but in long, winding sentences that looped around like the smoke from the oil lamps. One evening, in a caravanserai near the town of Bepazari, a group of travelers gathered around the fire. They came from different places: a merchant from Bursa, a letter carrier from Constantinople, a scholar returning from Cairo, and a woman traveling alone to meet her son in Aleppo. They did not know each other, but as the night deepened, they began to talk. The merchant told of a market where he had sold silk for a good price. The letter carrier described the weight of his bag, which he said was lighter now because most of the letters had been delivered. The scholar spoke of a book he had found, a manuscript of poetry written by a woman 300 years ago. And the woman, the one traveling alone, said little at first. But eventually, she told the others about her son. He was a young man, she said, who had gone to Aleppo to work in his uncle's shop. She had not seen him in 2 years. She was going to bring him a package of dried figs and a letter from his father, who had died the previous winter. There was a long silence after she said that. The fire crackled. The shadows danced on the walls. Then the scholar reached into his bag and brought out the manuscript of poetry. He said, "I have not read this book yet, but I think it contains verses about waiting, about the long, slow hope that keeps a mother traveling. Let me read one to you." And he opened the pages by firelight and read a poem in a low, steady voice. The poem spoke of a road that seemed endless, of a heart that held a small flame against the wind. The woman listened, and tears slid down her cheeks, but she was not sad. The tears were something else, something older than sadness. They were the water of recognition. The poem understood her, and the caravanserai was the place where that understanding could happen. The next morning, the travelers parted. They did not exchange names, because that was not needed. They had shared a fire, a poem, a silence. That was enough. The woman went on her way, and months later, when she reached Aleppo and handed her son the dried figs and the letter, she also told him about the poem. She remembered the first few lines. She said them aloud in the shop, among the bolts of cloth and the crates of spices. And her son, who had been lonely in a strange city, felt a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with the sun. He wrote the lines down on a scrap of paper and kept them in his pocket. They became his own small caravanserai, a place he could return to whenever the world felt too big. That is how the gifts of the caravanserai travel. Not in maps or ledgers, but in the quiet things: a story repeated, a poem remembered, a kindness passed from hand to hand. The caravanserai itself might crumble. Many of them have. The stones are scattered. The courtyards are empty. But the spirit of the caravanserai does not need walls. It lives in the gesture of offering soup to a stranger. It lives in the hospitality of a grandmother who insists you eat more. It lives in the motel clerk who gives you an extra blanket, in the friend who lets you sleep on the couch, in the quiet space you create for yourself at the end of a long day. And so, as you sink further into your pillow, let me leave you with this. The Caravanserai is not a place you have to travel to find. It is a place you carry with you. It is the cup of tea you make for yourself when you are tired. It is the 5 minutes you sit on the porch, watching the clouds without checking your phone. It is the moment you close your eyes at night and let the day dissolve. You are the keeper of your own Caravanserai. You can open its doors whenever you need. You can offer shelter to yourself, even when no one else is there. That is the deepest secret of the old Caravanserais. They were not only built of stone, they were built of attention, of patience, of the simple decision to pause. So tonight, as you lie here, you are doing exactly that. You are pausing. You are resting. You are letting the road be far away. And that is enough. There is no need to finish the journey tonight. The journey will still be there tomorrow. The camels will still need to be loaded. The letters will still need to be delivered. But right now, you are inside the walls. The fire is low. The keeper is humming. And the night is holding you like a gentle hand. Sleep well, then. Let the sound of my voice become like the wind in the eaves of a caravanserai. Let it fade. Let it become a whisper. Let it become a silence. In that silence, you will find your own rest. And the caravanserai of your dreams will welcome you, as it always has, as it always will. Good night. And yet, even after good night, there is one more thing that lingers, like the faint scent of wood smoke on a woolen cloak. It is the memory of a single moment, one that never made it into any traveler's journal, but that lives on in the pages of the mind. Imagine a caravanserai in the highlands of Anatolia, so remote that the keeper's only companion was a dog with one ear missing. The dog was not a guard dog, not a herding dog. It was simply a dog that had decided to stay. It would lie in the sun by the gate, its tail thumping slowly when a traveler appeared, as if to say, "I was expecting you." In this caravanserai, there was a small fountain in the center of the courtyard, fed by a spring that had been flowing for longer than anyone could remember. The water was cold and clear, and it made a sound like soft laughter as it fell into the stone basin. Travelers would cup their hands and drink, and then they would sit on the low wall around the fountain and say nothing. They did not need to speak. The water spoke for them, and the dog would come and rest its head on a knee, and the traveler would scratch behind its good ear, and for a moment, the world outside the walls did not exist. One afternoon, a young man arrived who was not a merchant or a messenger. He was a musician. He carried a saz, a long-necked lute wrapped in a cloth. He had been walking for days, and his fingers were blistered from the strings. He came to the fountain and drank, and then he unwrapped his instrument and began to play. The notes were not loud. They were soft, like the patter of rain on dry earth. He played a melody that he had learned from an old shepherd on the other side of the mountains. It was a song about a stream that had to find its way through the rocks. The dog lay down at his feet. The keeper came out from the kitchen and leaned against the doorframe. A pair of merchants who had been arguing over a debt stopped their argument and simply listened. When the musician finished, there was a silence that held the music like a bowl holds water. Then the keeper said, "You will stay here as long as you like. Your bed is free. Your food is free. All I ask is that you play that song again tonight when the stars come out." And the musician did. He played it by the fire, and the travelers who had been strangers became a circle of listeners. One of them, a woman who sold lace, began to hum along. Another, a man who repaired saddles, tapped his foot in a rhythm he had not used since he was a boy. The song traveled through them, and they were changed, not in any dramatic way, but in the way that a stone worn by water is changed. The edges softened, the surface grew smooth, and when the last note faded, they all sat in the quiet and looked up at the stars, which seemed closer than they had ever been. That night, the musician dreamed of a road that had no end, but the road was lined with fountains. Each fountain played a different melody, and he walked from one to the next, listening, learning, remembering. When he woke, he found that his fingers no longer hurt. The blisters had healed. He packed his saws and thanked the keeper, and the dog walked with him to the gate. As he stepped out onto the road, the dog wagged its tail once and then turned back to its spot in the sun. The musician walked on, but the song stayed behind, echoing in the fountain, in the fire pit, in the stone walls. And sometimes, on a quiet night, if you pass by the ruins of that caravanserai, you can still hear it, carried on the wind. So tonight, as you drift, remember that every caravanserai is a song waiting to be played, a fountain waiting to be heard. And the road will always lead you back to yourself. That is the final lesson, the one that needs no words. Rest now. The caravanserai of your dreams has already opened its gate.